Well, let me talk a little bit about the seance because I'm the one that set it up.
Okay.
And what
To
there
make it
were
clear that it wasn't at my house. So just because, we kind of connected the seance to this poltergeist, but the seance was not at my house.
right.
It was somewhere else.
Okay.
So what I did was I have a friend that we did it at her house. And
Was there a
then
reason you chose her place in particular?
it was just she had a place that was clean and we could all fit.
Good
I
enough.
mean, that was the only, and she was willing. Anyway, so there was 3 others that were involved in the seance. There were 3 women. Jen was one and 2 other ladies. And then I had a guy there that is a paranormal investigator who has cameras and all these different tools that pick up energies and stuff. And so he was videotaping it. And so there was actually 5 of us in the room together at once. There were no animals.
Spirit.
Right. There was no animals. There was it was in the evening. So there wasn't a lot of sunlight coming in, anything like that. And I smudged the place really good before we did it. We cleaned the area. We cast, the circle of safety and all. Now, I've done seances in the past, and some of them have done stuff, like really amazing things, and others of them like, not so much. But we went into this, and it was kind of strange. Jen sort of had this thing take over, and that kind of filled up most of the time with it. But it was a very frustrating entity because it wasn't making a lot of sense. And when I would ask it a question, it felt like it was getting really angry with me and wanting me to shut up. And I was just like, whatever. And then there was, anyway, so that was the thing with the seance. But she had, that was when we found out about her twin that had died. And we thought maybe that was trying to come through. And we had some noise stuff happen. We had some light stuff happen, some lighting things happen, and that we could not explain. The camera did not have a light on it. It was all natural lighting. So the reflections were not from the camera coming in. Anyway, it just was some of the stuff we saw there was no explanation for.
I can't remember. Was the camera infrared camera or was it just a regular straight up camera?
It was just regular camera.
Well, he had something that it could see in the dark. There was some kind of special feature. I don't know that it was infrared, but it was some kind of special feature that it could film in low lighting. It wouldn't film in the dark, but it would film in low lighting.
Okay. Yeah, which would be another reason why there wouldn't be a light on the camera itself. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that for my own interest in it. So,
and the thing went for about an hour. And we all sort of, when we were done, we were all sort of done. And Jen was absolutely worn out, having a hard time speaking, and it was just kind of weird.
Were you having a hard time because of energy drain, or was it because you didn't feel like you were completely back?
It's really hard for me to answer that question because it's the first time anything like that has ever happened to me before. So, I just felt like while I was talking to it, it was just like very, You know when you obviously if you get drunk and you start slurring your speech and your
Right.
brain is working faster than your mouth is, that's kind of what it felt like. I mean, except I didn't feel drunk, but it kind of felt like my mind was working faster than my mouth would work. And I didn't wasn't feeling drained at the time. I was the spirit was coming through. Um, and but afterwards, I mean, literally, I almost fell down before I got to the couch to lay down, and it was very draining. But now I will say, before that spirit came in, I am pretty sure that the spirit of my daughter what had come in because I have been around where she's spoken before. She's never directly spoken to me, but she has spoken to somebody else. And I know everybody on this thing's going to think I'm loony as a cuckoo, but she, I had brought, I had brought pictures of my grandparents to speak to, and I didn't even bring a picture of her because I'd spoken to her not too long ago and wasn't expecting. I was really wanting to speak to one of my grandparents, and I immediately, felt this warm presence right here on my shoulder, and it was just like this warm presence, and I kept thinking I'm feeling something, and I just didn't even recognize it as my daughter at first. I was trying to think it was somebody else. Like I said, I wasn't trying to contact her directly. And it just kept getting warmer and warmer and kind of engulfing me and just real warm. And she spoke, and I said a word, and Seth said, "Mother?" And I said, "I don't know how that could be mother." And then all of a sudden he asked a few minutes later, he said, "Do you think that's Emily?" And I was like, "Yes."
I figured that's who you were going to try to contact.
That's not who I was intending to contact at all. I would have brought a picture of him. A picture of him. A picture of him. A picture of him.
I'm curious, what was your response when you initially heard that? Because I know you didn't hear it during the time, but when you heard the evidence later, what was y'all's responses to that?
We were talking about Emily. As a matter of fact, you can hear a clip right before the giggle that says, "I wasn't even trying to contact her. I was trying to contact my parents." And I was explaining that I wasn't even expecting her to come through. And and then she did. And then that's exactly when you hear the giggle, kind of like I was there, and
Yeah.
you and I tricked you, or I knew I was, I came and you weren't, expecting it, kind of thing. So um, you can hear a few words before that saying I didn't invite her. She just came in.
So were you surprised to hear that on the tape afterwards?
Oh, yes. 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 And it kind of, I guess I kind of choked up a little bit. I was like, oh, and of course it might not have been her, but I mean, for it to happen exactly when it did, and to me, it sounded like a child giggling,
Yeah, I
was like,
agree.
oh.
And Seth, what was your
Well,
response?
I was a little bit skeptical, given that situation, because it came on so fast. It's like I said, okay, let's see if he wants to talk, and she started immediately, and I thought, oh God, here we go. And so I just kind of sat back and let the show roll, but I was having a hard time deciding what was, especially the Emily thing just seemed kind of like it was too easy. So I was a little bit skeptical.
I
But then
completely.
when that entity came in, I didn't like it. The male entity that she was doing, it irritated me
Right.
because I really felt like at one point, I believe it told me to shut up. I think I heard that, and it pissed me off. And so I sort of at that point just kind of went, okay, whatever, type of deal. That I tended to believe a little bit more just because of the energy of the thing. It was just kind of like, oh God, we got one of these. But when I heard the giggle, it was a validation that it actually was real for me. It validated it for me. So that
Yeah.
was a good thing. It was like, okay, it wasn't the Jen show, type of deal. I did because I was just getting to know her at that point. I
Yeah.
had
Right.
done
Right.
I'd done like a reading or two for you or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other than that, I didn't really personally, on a personal level, know her as the first time that we had hung out together in a social situation that wasn't about a reading. So I was kind of real skeptical because as you know, Faye, I've had some very strange people enter my life that just want to suck me dry. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm
One or two.
typically I'm typically pretty skeptical of people when we
Mhm.
get into that because they so I just sort of shut myself down with that. But it was kind of a nice validation that something actually happened because I kind of went away from there being a little dissatisfied with that seance, but it was a
Mhm.
nice validation.
Yeah. So the next piece that I at least found interesting, and I don't know if either of you found it interesting,
Not at all.
is well, turn your head anyway.
Shut up.
It's back. Anyway, there's a part where there's an EVP, and it sounds like it's
Okay,
saying
what's
it to
EVP again?
electronic voice phenomena, I believe, or something.
Yes.
It's basically where you hear a voice saying something. It's taped. You don't necessarily hear it in the moment, but then
Right.
when you go back and play the tape, we got a couple of those. But when you go back and play the tape, then you suddenly hear this voice saying something.
Or the
And
giggle. The giggle was an
yeah, the
EVP
Google
too.
was an
Yeah.
EVP. Yes, exactly. So now we come to one of the pieces of information, or not information, but evidence that I found interesting. And it's this clip right here. The light anomaly that goes across this woman's lap. Now, there was traffic that went by. I heard it on the earlier stuff, the edited out stuff. But in no case, when the traffic went by, was there any light that went. It wasn't like headlights shining through the window, anything
The
like
the
that.
lights could not shine through the
They
window
couldn't
because of
light
the
was because she was sitting, yeah, here, and the traffic was way out that way.
Right.
So the
And
where the light shown was right down here.
right. Well, it was down in her lap, which was below table
I
level
assure you there was no traffic in her lap.
that you know of.
No, I'm pretty certain there was no traffic in her lap at that moment.
Anyway, I found that to be particularly interesting because, now, like I said, I wasn't there, so my debunking is only based on the rest of the clip that I saw. So again, I ask you your opinions on this because I found that very intriguing that it went past and then came back in her lap, and then right after that was basically where you started channeling this entity, I believe,
Hmm.
that appeared to be wanting to talk to her. And so that was one of the reasons I was questioning who was where, because I wanted to see if this was indeed the woman that you felt the entity wanted to talk to. But it's almost as if it was trying to get her attention in that moment and
Hmm.
was unable to get her attention.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
now that I've supplied you guys with your opinion, what do you think?
I agree with that.
Well, I was impressed with that light thing. The one thing I had questioned was if there was a way that the light could have reflected off the lens of the camera. but he wasn't at that point in time moving the camera, and also it didn't do that any other time.
Yep.
So that kind of like, okay, I don't think it was a camera. It was an interesting thing, and it did sort of springboard us into other things happening.
Right.
So it was interesting.
Yeah, I found that piece particularly of interest just because, again, having gone through the full tape, there was no other point where there was any kind of a light below the plane of the camera at all. There was no other areas where there was a light that moved back and forth. And again, her lap was basically in darkness. So unless somebody had a flashlight or something doing something weird, and you can see you guys' hands are all up on the table. It's not like, oh, somebody's sneaking around doing this. So I found that to be a particularly interesting phenomenon. And then that final piece of evidence, this is the one that really, really interested me more than anything else.
I work in a garage.
In a house. In a house. In a house. In a house. In a house.
Is you're talking about the house that you guys are in, I believe. And
A house that the girl was in, but go ahead.
okay, that works. Again, just trying to organize what all was what, but yeah, you're talking about the house, and it's very interesting to me because you say the word house, and seconds later, a voice echoes you saying house, and that's like a Class A EVP. It's very hearable,
It's very,
and it's very obvious to me, at any rate, that nobody else is in there saying it. It's just this whispered voice that comes in directly after you saying house. And again, there was no other time where there was any kind of a weird echo or any kind of what am I trying to say? Where you're hearing, what is the word? Oh my God.
Reverb.
Thank you. Like we get sometimes on here where we're talking and
Talking.
Can you hear this? Huh?
Turn it up. Turn it up. Turn it
I
up.
can't. I already had it up. Ugh. Anyway, it echoed though. It's like I found that really interesting that there was no other point where we were getting any kind of echo, and the audio is extremely clear on that.
I was just going to say, Roy was talking about how at first, with Emily coming in and stuff, at that time, at the very beginning, I was like, whoa, I didn't know this thing was going to start happening so fast and stuff. And I never even doubted for a second that's exactly what was happening. It was Emily coming in and whatever. Um, but with the whole other spirit, I was kind of opposite of Roy because I thought that I kept questioning even myself about that I was even channeling something, because I thought the whole time I knew I wasn't making anything up, but I've never experienced anything like that before. And I didn't know what to expect or how it was going to, I never lost consciousness or, went away or anything. I was completely aware of everything going on and everything that I was saying and stuff. It was just more like he was trying to say something and I was trying to, repeat what he was saying out
You were
loud.
the interpreter.
Yeah. And and I'll give you a little bit of backstory. What I didn't know this at the time, but the girl that he was talking about, the blonde-headed lady that he was talking about, he kept saying. They asked, "Well, where do you know? Where do you know her from?" And I said, and the entity said, "Work," and at her work. And they said, "Well, she doesn't have a job, so what are you talking about?" And I said, "House." And that's when I kept thinking, I just kept getting this vision of a house in my mind, and he was at a house, and he was like trying to talk to her, and she was not talking back. And what had happened is I don't know when it was. I think it was the weekend before, maybe, or something. She had gone to a house of a friend of hers and done a cleansing, and she
Oh.
had walked around and cleansed this house for her friend because there was a spirit there that he didn't want. And so all of this was revealed afterwards. And so I guess when it said work, I mean, she technically was working, she was doing something at this house, and he was trying to contact her during that time, and she was ignoring him, or not ignoring, but I don't think she said she never felt a presence, she never felt anything or anything like that. And so he was directing all of his frustration towards her in the circle. And again, you had the not light anomaly and stuff. So that's where so afterwards I even asked Roy. I was like, you know, was that for real? And he was like, yeah, I mean, that's pretty for real, because I've just never had anything like that happen again. And then when I said house, and then you heard it whisper house, I was like, whoa, that was just, to me, when you said the giggle is what kind of made you go, okay, that was real. That's when I heard the word house after I said it. I was like, oh wow.
One of the reasons I kind of figured that the male entity thing coming through was real was because I remember in the early stages of my channeling how difficult it was for them to communicate through me,
Hmm.
because it takes practice to open up those energetic lines to do that. And then eventually, I mean, he never really became animated. Abraham never really got animated. He was
Nobody sure
always
shocked the
sort of,
shit out of my
he could
ass.
throw some energy, but he was sort of talk like this, type of deal. And there was early on, it was a lot of work for me to get out of the way to clear the path. As when I finally would just like leave and let myself rest and let him chatter, was it became a lot easier. So it just reminded me of my early days.
Yeah. So what was your thought when you heard that saying house directly after her?
It was funny. It was like, it was kind of like, I don't know. Um,
See, that
I,
one
I
struck me
don't
as
think any of that really. Um, I wasn't. What is the word? It was a nice validation, but
Mhm.
none of it really shocked me. None of it was like, oh my God, did you hear that? I was just kind of like, because I guess I've been through this enough that it was like, okay, so there is something there. Good. That's good to know. It was like a validation for me.
see,
And
I
me, I was the whole time, I was like, oh my God, did you hear that? I was like,
All
oh,
right.
nothing
yeah.
like this has ever happened to me before.
See, I
It's
I
like you
found
just
it.
won the lottery. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's never happened to me
like,
to me before.
yeah.
Yay. Yeah, I found it very interesting, and I got very excited about it just because again it was for that validation.
Hmm.
Because there's so often that you go through and it's like, yeah, okay, sure, this is happening, kind of that whole skeptic thing. And so to get those things with the giggle, the two-syllable word, the light anomaly, and then it repeating house after, for me, was some very interesting proof. Because the truth is when I got the initial tape, I was just sort of like, yeah, I'll go through this, but I don't expect much. And there was much more in there than what I anticipated. And again, there's some proofs in there that I can't tell for sure, and so those ones I'm not adding, to this. But I think I got very excited just because it was like, oh my God, there really is some sort of proof that I personally cannot debunk. Again, not having been there, of course, but that's where you guys come in, is that you were there, so you guys were able to be like, oh no, yeah, we had somebody back here who's saying stuff or whatever. I mean, but that to me made it very, very interesting and very exciting, because it's like, wow, we have actual proof of stuff. So, I'm curious, given an option, would you guys be doing more of this, or will you be doing more of this, or any idea,
I'm
or
open to it. I we're probably we've got a different group that's happening right now.
Mhm.
We get together and do a healing circle every Sunday. And
Right?
so it'll probably be those people involved this time instead of the other ones
Mhm.
and have a different place. But yeah, I'm always open to things like that. And I know that Doug, who did the filming, is really interested in doing more of that. So
Has he
I
ever responded to that ever?
yeah, yeah, he did.
Okay.
I forgot to tell you.
Yes, you did.
You didn't tell me either.
I think the quote was, "What utter bullshit? What is she?" No, I'm kidding. He didn't say that at all.
Whatever.
No, he
Okay,
was.
we can
He
try
was.
this again, Seth.
It was.
You
It
want me
was.
to turn this up
Turn it
for
up.
you?
Turn it up, girl. No, he was. He was like. It got his juices flowing again. He's ready to do this again. It got him real excited.
Me
Uh,
too.
yeah. So it was a
Cool.
good thing for him. But he didn't. We haven't really chatted specifically about stuff. But he's a firm believer in things. So
Yeah. Well, I certainly would like to see more happen. I mean, just because again, for me going through and doing the editing, I was very excited about this. Now, I want to shift gears just briefly. We're starting to really run out of time here on this, but I do want to ask Jen. So, are you planning on doing any kind of a cleansing on your house, especially if you're planning to do any more of the stuff with the seance? Because again, bringing more stuff in to your home, I don't know if you want to do that. So, are you thinking about getting your house cleansed, or what are your plans there?
Well, I'm burning that cobalt. Is that what it's called?
Oh,
So
cobalt.
Paul, yeah.
cobalt. I burn that all the time in my sunroom, and so this place is pretty cleansed on this end of the house. But he made a comment earlier about poltergeist as pets, and no, that's completely the wrong term, and that you don't think about it that way. But I mean, I'm just intrigued with it doing two things in 1 week. But then I don't know if it's the entity that you know made my son freak out or not, or and if that's the case, then no, I don't want to hear. But if it's just going to move posters around, and if that's something different, then I'm
You
just
know,
kind of intrigued to wake up and see what else it's done the next morning. It's like Christmas, it's like, oh, look at that.
yeah,
Well, we have a friend that's raising a deer, so why can't you raise a poltergeist? That's all I'm saying.
I totally get that dichotomy of it's like on the one hand it's so fascinating and so bizarre and so interesting when this stuff happens that it's like I found it very difficult to want to let go of it. And obviously I haven't totally let go of my curiosity and stuff, otherwise I wouldn't be even, talking about any of this. But at the same time, when I ran into the more negative stuff, it was like,
Mm,
oh, this needs to go.
yeah.
Well,
But
I
it,
can
it
tell
really
you,
is.
I've been to her house a couple, 3 times,
Uh,
and I've never felt anything icky.
right. Excuse me.
Corona.
Oh yeah.
Could be cigarettes, but we could go with
It's
Corona.
it's not. It's sniffleless.
Oh, I see. um, but yeah, I would like to do a séance here, and I mean, there's not, I don't. I want the higher level stuff, and not, and I don't know how you can pick and choose and say, okay,
Well,
you can come in, but you can't. But
I'm going to clarify this while we're on the
okay.
air. If we're going to do one there, then especially the child does not need to be there the night we do
Oh
it.
no. Oh
The
Yeah,
kids
no.
need to be gone.
I would
No.
say there needs to be some extra precaution taken there because
Like a spiritual
yeah,
condom.
right, exactly. You've got two kids. either one of which could be pulling in poltergeist activity, or it could be you. But then on top of that, if you're doing a seance, it may open out a portal for more stuff to come in. So I would be, I would have the place, thoroughly like cleansed before and after, in order to try to prevent any other weirdness. On the other hand, it would be interesting to see if you can get in touch with whatever it is that's moving things there and find out if there's a reason for what it's doing, or if it's just there messing with you and stuff. So, well, kids, this has been fascinating. Do y'all have any final thoughts on all of this, or are we good?
I do. Boo!
Yeah. And you, Jen?
I don't guess. Boo!
Ah! All right. Well, this has been very interesting and very enjoyable.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Remember to like and share this, and if you have any comments, we'd love to hear them.
Yes,
Subscribe.
and make me famous and have lots of views, so
Yeah.
I can be famous.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, folks. Well, from EDI, we appreciate your time. Thank you and have a great day. Take care.